This is a Flying Cow production.
There was a man named Worrell, Ernest P. Worrell. Let's celebrate this champion.
Well, hello and welcome back to Around the Worrell. Here on the Flying Cow, Around the Worrell is, of course, our Patreon exclusive podcast where we talk all things Ernest P. Worrell. I, of course, am your host, the Flying Cow himself, Clay Johnson, and here with me today is none other than my co-host, the litigator, Lauren Collins. Lauren, how are you, sir?
I'm doing good, Clay. How about yourself?
Doing good. I'm, I've been you and I actually had a half-hour conversation, and none of it had anything to do with this movie. So I'm a little concerned about getting into the conversation of this. We kept going around having to talk about this movie.
If we want to turn this into a podcast about the CWDC verse, that's fine by me.
Oh, yes. But we, of course, are here to talk about Ernest movies. And we are today discussing 1995's Slam Dunk Ernest. Like I said, it was released in 1995. And it was directed by John Cherry, written by John R. Cherry III, same man, I'm pretty sure, and Daniel Butler. The music was by Mark Adler, and it starred Jim Varney, Silk Cozart, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, and many, many more. This film, first of all, I want to point out the fact that we are back to a film directed by John Cherry. And this one was also written by John Cherry and Daniel Butler, who I don't think we've seen since Ernest Scared Stupid. In fact, I think that's the last film that he appeared in, but obviously he co-wrote this one.
That sounds about right.
Yeah, and the music, for the last little bit, we've had contributions by remind me of his name. Existo.
Yes, exactly. Give me 1 second.
Bruce Arntzen. Bruce Arntzen, yes, has been doing the music for quite a while, and not only did he not do the music, Coke Sam's did not write this one. In fact, I've looked ahead. They are not associated with any of the next few films, which is quite an interesting term considering the fact that I believe Bruce Arntzen shares a story credit on that one. On the last film, Ernest Goes to School.
Yes, I think he did. Ernest Goes to School.
And Coke Sam's also directed that one. And we both, I mean, you know, it wasn't glowing, but we both enjoyed that one. And now those two are not going to make any more contributions.
Nope. But now we're in the purely direct-to-video era of Ernest.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And you can tell.
Yeah.
We'll talk about that in a little bit. But I will say I'm a little interested because, you know, like I said, Coke Sam's did not write for Ernest Rides Again.
Mm-hmm.
Bruce Arntzen still did the music for that one. And then John Cherry did not direct the last one, so Coke Sam stepped in. And now all of a sudden, so we had two movies where basically they swapped. And now all of a sudden John Cherry's taking back over and Coke Sam's will have no more hand. You got to wonder if maybe there was a falling out, or maybe I do believe that, we have discussed previously the 1999 film starring Bruce Arntzen, Existo.
Existo, yes.
Yes, which we might talk about at some point. But I believe, did Coke Sam's direct that one?
Give me a second. I'll look that up.
Because I do think that he had a hand in that. So I wonder if maybe they left work.
It was. Coke Sam's did direct Existo.
Yeah. So, okay. I'm wondering if maybe they left to work on that project or if there was seemingly some sort of falling out between John Cherry and Coke Sam's because they had worked in tandem.
Yeah.
For the first, 4 or 5 films?
Coke Sam's has been around as early as Dr. Otto.
Yeah. So for the first 5 films.
Yeah.
And, like I said, they kind of traded off after, for the last 2. And now we're stuck with John Cherry working on these. And
here's what may have been a factor is looking down. The first thing listed under Coke Sam's IMDb is his role as a producer. And he produced Hey Vernon, the Family Album, Dr. Otto, Ernest Saves Christmas, the TV show, co-produced Ernest Goes to Jail, co-produced Scared Stupid, executive produced Ernest Rides Again. My guess, if just looking at this, is just once it got to the direct-to-video stage, he just wasn't going to be a producer anymore. And when either because he wasn't.
But I mean, he directed. I mean, yes, it wasn't technically direct to video because it was released in a
well. Here's the thing:
couple of cities, but still.
But Ernest Goes to School ultimately got pretty much shunted over to video, but it was filmed with the intention of it being released in theaters.
Right. I mean, limited, but yeah.
Well, no, I mean, it got theater, but remember, there's at the end of Ernest Rides Again, there's a tag for coming to theaters. Ernest Goes to School.
Yeah. That's true.
Ernest Rides Again tanked so hard they didn't give it a theatrical release.
Because I mean, it was released the very next year, so they probably did not know by the time they had started production.
Yep.
But yeah, I mean, as Lauren alluded to, we are firmly in direct to video territory, and you can tell. I mean, the budgets for these have never been huge.
Yeah,
but we're obviously working on shoestring budget. We're gonna film in probably with permission from a mall to film specifically while no one's there.
Yeah.
We're gonna dress up some back room and call it a restaurant for 5 minutes.
Yeah.
That was a sad set. That was a really, especially when Ernest came in and talked about it being a fancy restaurant. I'm like, oh, no, it's not. No, it's not.
You'd think they could at least, in the same way that you just get permission from a mall to use it after hours. It's like restaurants are closed a number of hours during the day. Maybe shoot at a quarter over here. Just let us have space.
Right. And as we mentioned in the last one, this film was shot in Vancouver. Mm-hmm. It was the last of 3 that was shot in Vancouver. I mean, my only guess is that they had a relationship with somebody that owned a mall.
Yeah.
But they didn't have a relationship with somebody that owned a restaurant.
Maybe so.
Because they're shooting on a shoestring budget.
Yeah.
I'll
tell you, the biggest giveaway from me of the low budget nature of this film was and this was most evident in one particular scene. In the mall, the audio was just actively bad. Like they didn't appear to have boom mics. I think. The audio sound was literally just like listening to people talking in a big echoey mall.
I mean, it's still audible, and it's not.
It's still audible, but it reads exactly like what you do with a low budget movie that can't afford audio equipment.
I will say for me, it wasn't super distracting.
Yeah.
Like it wasn't like I was like, oh, God, what are they saying or anything like that.
No, there was just a content underneath like all of the audio. In the same way that you watch like a low budget feature like Birdemic or something, not quite this bad, but when you cut between different angles, like the quality of the audio changes because you can hear road noise from one direction.
Right. I will also say the cast, a good bit of the cast are at least recognizable.
Yeah.
Obviously, the biggest name you've got here is Kareem Abdul-Jabbar.
Yes.
But aside from Varney himself, is Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. But Silk Cozart, who is arguably the second lead in the film.
Basically, yes. Given how the plot works, he's
Yeah.
much the lead,
Yeah. I mean, this oddly is another film that kind of is Ernest's film again.
Yeah.
I think it would have made more sense to make it more of, because I mean, in parts it is,
Yeah.
Silk Cozart's character Barry. It is more his film, but like I said, Silk Cozart is at least someone that you would recognize.
Yeah.
I definitely, the moment I saw him, I was like, okay, I've definitely seen that guy in some stuff.
Mhm.
I will say, looking at his credits, he was never like the lead in a film or even like in a sitcom or anything like that. But he was kind of the go-to guy in the 90s anytime they needed a good-looking love interest.
Yeah. Exactly. And he's based on his credits, he's worked pretty steadily, over the years. So
no, he's still
He's
got some projects now that
Yeah.
are in production and things like that. Yeah.
Since we're talking
And
about lead and secondary lead, do we want to sum up the film real quick?
yeah, let's go ahead and let's get into basically what the film is about. So, for those who haven't seen the film, and you don't really need to, but basically, Ernest is I believe he is part of the cleaning crew.
Yeah, Ernest is a janitor. Once again, he's
Right. He's a janitor, but he's
It's
a
a
janitor
janitorial
at a mall. But
Yeah.
this mall specifically employs a cleaning agency.
Yes.
They are not custodians that specifically work employed by the mall. They are a part of an agency that is contracted
Yes.
by the mall
And
called
they're-
Clean Sweep.
Yep.
And I guess Ernest we'll talk more about that. But yes, basically he works for this group, and they are all everybody else on the Clean Sweep crew are part of a basketball team. Ernest is not part of that basketball team, but really wants to. He basically, as part of the fact that he covered for really an issue that he caused, but still they appreciated the fact that he took the blame.
Yeah.
They agree to allow him to be part of the team, just to sit on the bench. Ernest is actively bad at basketball.
Yeah, they tell him he can join the team, but amongst themselves they say he'll just be our mascot. They'll just let him sit on the bench, and he can play overtime or something.
Right.
And so Ernest then he's bemoaning his situation back in the locker room afterwards, and is visited by the
he takes part in a game, actively causes them to lose.
That's true. He manages to score a technical foul despite the fact he's not in the game.
Yes. And yes, then he is visited by the Archangel of Basketball, played by Kareem Abdul-Jabbar.
Mm-hmm.
And basically, Kareem gives him magic shoes to help him be good at basketball.
Yes.
And we are also introduced to the fact that, Ernest does eventually use the shoes and, eventually ends up playing and becomes a big part of the team and all this kind of stuff. But we're also eventually introduced to the fact that there is a subplot going on here that is basically, there's an angel in this, but there's also a demon.
Yes.
Who has taken the guise of a shop owner in the mall who is actively trying to get a kid to steal shoes from his shop.
Yes.
And eventually find out that the whole plot is to try to corrupt the young boy to steal shoes and other things. And there's also a love interest that gets drawn in, but that's not super important. Basically, Ernest has to ultimately decide between being a good sport and being the star, the basketball star.
Yes.
And what is he going to choose? It's an Ernest movie. We all know what he's going to choose. He's a good dude. But yeah, so that is that. And I will say, just talking about the plot as a whole, the first like half hour of this movie very much seems like a straightforward plot of if somebody pitched Ernest plays basketball. It's exactly what I would expect.
Oh yeah.
You know, but
You mean
to the point
before he gets before
the shoes. Yeah. To the point where it's like it's so straightforward that it's not very interesting.
No.
I mean, not to say that Jim Varney's not doing some good comedic bits. He is, of course he is. But it's so straightforward that it is cookie cutter. And it's like,
it's
okay,
not
this is
movie material. It's just physical comedy bits.
It's not adding anything. And then they throw in the whole angel and demon subplot. And I'm just like, okay, this is different, but I'm not sure it's different good.
Yeah.
Because, you know, like we said, we are, but before we get into all of that, I do want to kind of go a little bit more towards the beginning, because as I said, when we are introduced into this, first of all, you can tell this is very early 90s because all of the credits are written in like a graffiti font to the point that this is the title card that we get. For those who are just listening, it is basically a very early 90s rendition of graffiti, written Slam Dunk Ernest. And, you look at that title card and you're like, that was done in either the late 80s or the early 90s.
Yeah.
Like, it's very dated. And so it's just like, okay, so you get kind of the world that we're coming into. And the first other characters that we are introduced to, other than Ernest, are, of course, the clean sweep team. And I will say the clean sweep team is mostly lesser known actors. I will say, let's see. One of the ones that I did definitely recognize was Miguel A. Nunez Jr., who has been in a bunch of different things. You would definitely recognize him if you saw him. He's known for things like he was in Scooby-Doo, Nashville, The Family Business.
He was in Street Fighter, apparently, the movie.
Okay, yeah. Also, apparently, was on Raven's Home last year. Yeah. If we're interested in that. But yeah, definitely a recognizable face.
Yes.
But you've also got, I believe, Colin Lawrence, Richard Leacock, and Lester Berry rounding out the rest of the basketball team. And they're all, honestly, they're very kind of, they all have names, but we don't know much about these characters at all.
Barry gets a personality and a personal life, and the rest of them are just sort of other players on the teams, like you said, with names. That's
I will say, I believe it's Willie that is given the subplot that he's got a thing for another character, Dr. Love.
Oh, the announcer.
And yes, and we'll talk about Dr. Love a little bit more in a second. But he also apparently is supposed to be very like passive and peace loving and stuff, because there's a line in which He says, Ernest, this even annoys me. And I was like, if I knew more about that character, that line might mean something. Because I was like, that line comes off as that we know that this guy is doesn't get annoyed easily, and I'm like, we don't know that. We have not spent enough time with this character to know that. So once again, we have very ill-defined characters, and we are being treated as if we know them better than we do. I will say it doesn't stick out as badly as I believe it did in Ernest Goes to School. Because it's really, we're only meant to rely on these characters like in bits and pieces. Mm-hmm. For the most part, they really are just basketball players.
Yeah.
But something that I noticed like almost immediately, number one, something that we haven't really talked about in all of the other episodes, when we got, Ernest Goes to Camp, we didn't make a note we kind of mentioned it. The Second Chance Boys were a very diverse cast.
Mm-hmm.
Since then, it's been very white. Occasionally we've gotten Jackie Welch in there, mm-hmm. To throw. And I will say I missed Jackie Welch in this. I don't think she's appeared. I can't remember the last time she was in. Was it Goes to Jail? The last time that we saw her?
No, I could be wrong. I think she shows up at the end of Goes to School, doesn't she? She's like the superintendent. Am I wrong?
No, she's not the superintendent. And remember, there was that teacher that we were like, this would have been a perfect part for her.
Yeah.
And I mean, not to say that the woman that played the teacher, we talked about how much we liked the job that woman did.
Yeah.
But I kind of pointed that out to point out the fact that we were missing Jackie Welch.
Yeah.
And she's not in this film either. Which, I've definitely missed her because she was always a solid kind of a member of that Ernest chorus.
Yeah, you're right. Scared Stupid was the last time.
Okay, so she wasn't Scared Stupid. Okay.
Must have been a pretty small part. In Existo. She appears in Existo.
Yes, I knew that. So she probably better friends with Coke Sam's than John Cherry.
Yeah, it sounds like that may be the case. She's part of that side of things.
Yeah. But yeah, so we've had very white casts, and I just wrote down because the very first group that we see as people that we see aside from Ernest is the Clean Sweep crew, and I was like, wouldn't you know it, they wait for Slam Dunk Ernest to finally inject a little bit of diversity in here.
Well, and they're going to make up for that next movie, I suppose.
Oh, I know. No. Oh, yeah, I'm not looking forward to that. But I will say something that I wrote down is that, aside from Barry comes across as a very genuine character. But a lot of the other guys, I wrote down at one point, these guys read as black characters written by white guys. Because there's a lot of very caricature-ish stuff going on here to the point that it started to make me feel a little uncomfortable. And I was like, please tell me that they made some of these suggestions. Because honestly, there are some weird moments where there are some weird bits where they seem to be dancing around racial subjects, but like not like the black characters bring up a couple of things here and there where it's like, okay, are they trying to address some racial, because there's a line in which Ernest simply says, I just want to be one of the guys. and they say something like, "Whoa, hold on now." They react as if he said, "I just want to be one of the brothers, guys." I'm glad they didn't do that.
Yes, exactly.
But it makes you feel like that's what was originally written, and then it was vetoed, but the reaction wasn't changed. You know? So it just, because being one of the guys, that's not a white-black thing. That's just a, any guy that doesn't feel part of the guy group just wants to be one of the guys.
Yeah, he just wants to be part of the team. But
exactly.
The reaction doesn't quite.
I mean, I'm glad they didn't do this.
Oh, exactly.
But it almost would have made more sense. It instead of brothers, if he had said one of the boys, again, would have been a little problematic. So I'm glad they didn't do it. But the way that they reacted, it was as if he had said one of those things. And I did not write down the specific, but there's another moment earlier in the film where something like that is brought up. And I was just like it felt like a racial dynamic. And I was like, I'm all for, making a statement about racial politics and things like that. But I don't think Slam Dunk Ernest is the film to do it. I don't think that's where you're going to make your statement.
No,
especially when it's written by two white guys.
Yeah. I think I told you before last time that I'd been intrigued by Nathan Rabin's huge review of all the different Ernest movies he went through recently.
Yeah.
And one of the notes he made about this film was that what was the line here? Yeah. The message, it's well intentioned, but the message that black children should stay in school so they don't end up being a janitor like their dad is condescending at best and kind of racist at worst. Yeah, it's trying to send a positive message, but just the visuals and everything that's attached to it, it's uncomfortable in some ways. So especially because it also, just like you mentioned earlier, the fact that the Ernest gets magic basketball shoes plot in this film is paralleled with a 12-year-old boy struggling whether or not to steal a pair of shoes, whether he wants to emulate his father and go to college type stuff.
And that whole subplot for me is the biggest miss of this whole film.
Yeah.
Because not only is it just a little too goofy to be taken seriously at all, but the whole idea is so convoluted, because when you really break it down, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, who honestly is not bad in this film. I mean, he's not doing anything, amazing, but he's filling in perfectly, playing Kareem.
Yeah.
Not actually playing Kareem, but that's what he has done in movies. Is he basically just plays a version of himself, and he's always been very likable.
Yeah.
And so that's fine. But basically his whole plan is that he knows that the demon, his last name is Moloch, but
according to Wikipedia, he is Zamiel Moloch.
Right. Well, and here's the thing. Moloch sounds like a demon name.
Oh, because it is.
Right.
It's like a what did I look this up? It's a it's a name of a an ancient god in the Bible, a Canaanite god.
Okay, yeah. So
it's usually depicted when you see depictions of the god Moloch. He's usually depicted in sort of a satanic kind of way, like a goat-headed man. Yeah.
Right. But what I thought was interesting, the only reason I knew his name was Moloch is because I looked it up on the Wikipedia page.
They do say remember when he's introduced. He introduced himself as Mr. Moloch at one point. I'm not sure.
I missed
They may not ever say Zamiel, which also has the ring of
honestly, Kareem calls him Zamiel.
Oh, is it Kareem?
In fact, that was the only time that I heard his name at all. And I was like, why are we leaning on Zamiel and not Moloch? Especially for this reveal.
For the
I
reveal,
mean,
you think you definitely would. Yeah, exactly.
Number one, this guy, it's obvious from the jump that he is trying to get this kid to steal shoes.
Yes.
The magic shoes, which, number one, let's talk about these shoes for a second, because they are ridiculous looking.
Yes.
They are bright blue, and if it was just the shoe itself, it would just look like a regular sneaker.
Yeah, fancy basketball.
But they put all of these tubes all over it. They even connect in the back, and it's got like a face mask on it that you have to open and close every time you take the shoes on and off.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a weird contraption. Weird looking shoes.
It's an ugly, over-designed shoe.
It really is. It really is. I mean, I'm sure that it was. We have to make these shoes look special. I'm like, just the fact that they're bright blue is enough.
Yeah.
I don't think you need all the. I mean, I'm sure that they're playing on the the idea of like the pump, which was huge.
Clearly. I mean,
in the 90s,
it mentions the pressure on the back of the shoe. Yeah.
Yeah. So they're basically just going, to a ridiculous degree of, let's make these shoes absolutely ridiculous looking, to the point that I think they have like a pump looking thing on, not the tag where it normally would be, but on like the foot of the shoe, to the point where it kind of looks like an eyeball.
Yeah.
Which, is intentional because they kind of turn them into characters with Ernest. But getting back to the plan. So Kareem's plan, because he knows that Moloch is going after the kid with the shoes, because that's revealed at the end. He's like, how'd you know I was going after the kid the whole time? It's like, it's pretty obvious. We were paying attention. His plan is, let's introduce these shoes and make it obvious that the shoes are what make Ernest play basketball well, because that's going to eventually make the kid not want the shoes.
Well, yeah, the long-term plan, like you said, seems to be that Moloch wants to corrupt the kid with the shoes, wants to tempt him into stealing them and ruining his life.
Right.
The Archangel of basketball comes to Ernest, offers him the identical magic shoes, which for whatever reason are also on sale in the mall.
They look exactly like the ones.
They're literally exactly the same shoes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Offers him the shoes, and like you say, the long-term plan seems to be that Ernest, after getting the shoes, will become great at basketball, but then will become conceited and become so full of himself that the son, incidentally named Quincy's the boy, that he will eventually see Ernest and how the shoes have brought about his downfall as a person somehow, and he's made him less of a team player and less of a good person, and he will realize the fallacy of his ways, that he does not need these shoes, and therefore will forego Moloch's temptations.
The problem with all of that is that the kid is on board with Ernest the entire way.
Oh, yeah.
At no point is the kid like, Ernest's a ball hog. Ernest's stealing all the glory from my dad. No. He's more just like, Ernest is a better player than my dad. Yeah. Give Ernest the ball. Ernest, blah, blah, blah. And it's not until he sees Ernest throw the shoes away that he's like, maybe I should do the same thing.
That's true.
So
the plan
this,
you're right.
We have not only basically helped the demon lure the kid into stealing the shoes, but now we have turned Ernest, who, number one, had no place in this kid's life, and I think that was a mistake. We'll talk about that in a second. No place in this kid's life until he started becoming good at basketball. He's now replaced his dad as his hero to the point where Ernest throwing away the shoes tells him that he needs to give up the shoes as well.
Yeah, you're right. The plan.
So we've turned the kid into a criminal and turned him against his dad.
The-
Great job, Kareem.
The Archangel's plan is not that the kid will recognize that Ernest has become lesser of a person because of the shoes. It requires that Ernest himself realize it,
Yeah.
and make the change in front of the boy.
Yes.
And then Quincy then recognizes, oh, I now need to still follow Ernest's example. And
Yes.
reject the shoes.
Because ultimately, that's what happens. It's not that he does realize, oh,
yeah,
these shoes have turned Ernest into a jerk. It's that, oh, Ernest doesn't need the shoes. I don't need the shoes.
Yeah. But yeah, the fact that this Ernest basketball movie is also laden with like life lessons about responsibility and a biblical supernatural plot. That
it's like when did we decide to turn Ernest into Faust?
Yeah. But honestly, I'm not sure I would if they would just, now that I think of it, just make a straight up like the Bible according to Ernest. That could have been funny in its own way. If you just do
some vignettes.
Yeah,
I mean, I will say, unfortunately, we have seen some bad examples of Ernest vignettes.
We have.
But we've also seen like bits of movies that I'm like, they could have just made that shorts and that would have been great.
I mean, heck, if you just want to go with the magic side of things, just Ernest with magic would have been fine. I don't need Ernest with magic basketball shoes specifically.
No. No, and honestly, while I enjoy a lot of the showboating and stuff that Ernest does, and there's, some decent, physical comedy here.
Yeah.
I actually wrote down, I was like, it's sad when some of the best parts of your movie are Ernest interacting with shoes. But not to say that some of that didn't go a little far. It did. Yeah. But
I got tired of the shoes.
Overall, this film does not have enough of
anything
from the fun Jim Varney Ernest bits.
No, you're right. It doesn't.
And the ones that it does have, it overplays.
Mm-hmm.
Like we said, at a certain point, Ernest gets the shoes, and the shoes are basically sentient. We're introduced to pretty quickly.
Yeah.
The shoes have a mind of their own, and Ernest has a lot of physical comedy with the shoes.
They talk through squeaks like they're minions.
Yeah. Honestly, the sound effects in this movie overall to me are overplayed.
Yeah.
We'll talk about, to me, one of the worst ones later. But one of the, like you said, the shoes talk through squeaks, and the first little bit of that I don't mind. But it gets to be too much. They overplay it too much. And we spend too much time with the shoes. Not to say that some of the physical comedy that he's doing with it isn't fun. It is, but we needed less than half of the squeaks that we got. They way overplayed that. Another thing, and I kind of mentioned it earlier, I feel like it was a huge missed opportunity to not have the young boy Quincy, who I don't think we've mentioned yet, is Barry's son.
Barry's son, yeah.
Yes. He should have been Ernest's best friend to begin with.
Well, because had some kind of relationship with Ernest.
Yes, because we've seen how well Jim Varney plays with kids. That's often a solid connection to form. And do they eventually form it? Yes. Yeah. But it's not until after he gets the shoes. In fact, the first time we see him even seeing Ernest, he sees that Ernest is on the team, and he more gives a look of like, oh, this guy. And I'm just like, you should like Ernest. Ernest should be a guy that you like, because Ernest is basically a child himself. So, Ernest usually has a pretty good rapport with children.
Yeah.
And to not build that relationship, because that would have, I think, contributed to the whole idea of I shouldn't be your hero. Your dad should be your hero, kind of thing. We can be friends, we can be buddies, but I shouldn't be the guy you look up to. That's your dad.
It also makes the lessons of everything towards the end play better if, like you say, Ernest has a pre-existing relationship with Quincy. Just as a adult kid he's friendly with, whatnot.
Yeah.
Kid looks up to him. Ernest gets the shoes. He becomes good at basketball. The kid admires him. The kid, Quincy, ends up being the one who sees and recognizes that Ernest is becoming a worse person as a result of this.
That would have been great. Yeah.
Quincy then distances himself from Ernest. Ernest sees what's happening. Like, he likes being a basketball star.
Yeah.
You don't necessarily have to play him also in this way as conceited as he is here. But
either
Ernest
that
Quincy
or
pulling away. Ernest,
Sure.
And so it's not in this movie. What happens is Ernest has the realization, and then Quincy follows his lead. If you swap it around, Quincy is the one who realizes the shoes are corrupting him. The shoes are bad, and Ernest has to, being a little bit dimmer on this, has to he learns from Quincy.
Sure. Yeah. Honestly, that would have been a great. Or just to kind of brush up that a little bit, what if Quincy doesn't realize it immediately, starts to emulate Ernest?
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Starts to be a ball hog and an asshole himself.
Yep.
And then when he realizes that his friends are abandoned, or maybe his dad is just like, dude, why are you acting like this? This is not the way I read it. Something like that, to bring the dad back in, to kind of reinstitute dad as his hero.
Yeah.
I think, and then, him basically, as you say, rejecting Ernest, and then Ernest, as you say, learning through Quincy, learning first. I think, I think because honestly, his decision all of a sudden to get rid of the shoes really isn't earned.
No, it doesn't. Yeah, and the other way you could have played that, I guess, is that if, like you say, if you have Quincy emulating him, Quincy's becoming more of a bully and whatnot.
Yeah,
and you then have Ernest recognizing that in Quincy, that he's being a bad influence. If you want to still have Ernest,
that too,
the primary actor here, you don't see Ernest recognizing it in himself. You see Ernest when he watches this kid emulating him, he realizes, no, this is the wrong path. I need to back off this. And then he can still be the one then teaching Quincy a lesson.
Sure.
But it makes more sense than just Ernest realizing mid-game to reject the shoes.
Yeah, because honestly, I feel like that was really the intention of Ernest doing this, Quincy basically being the one to snap him out of it.
Yeah.
But there's not enough of a connection between the two of them for it to really read. And so, no time is taken to, develop any sort of character moments there. And so, it really feels unmotivated. But yeah, I will say, I want to, speaking of, things with the shoes, and the, kind of the influence that, Moloch has, I want to go ahead and, bring up, Ernest's love interest in this film. Irma, I can't remember her last name, even though they say it a billion times.
I thought I wrote it down. I think it's Termadiddle.
Yeah, I think you're right. Irma.
No, sorry. It's Teradiddle.
Teradiddle. Irma Teradiddle. And all of a sudden I can't find her name. Played by Stevie Valance.
Yes.
Yeah. Apparently in this she was credited as Louise Valance.
Yes.
We're introduced. She also works in the mall. She works at a kiosk. Now, we're introduced to her after hours. Why she's still there, I have no clue. Because there's nobody there. I mean, I get why I get behind, Moloch's character being there because, he's the owner of the shop. He's shutting down. But she's literally, I don't even know what she does at her kiosk. I guess she sells lottery tickets because she's constantly holding lottery tickets. But that doesn't seem
lottery tickets. I think she also tries to sell them like greeting cards or something at the beginning.
Okay, yeah, because lottery tickets doesn't seem like a mall kiosk job.
No. I mean, she's there because they just want to introduce her character and establish that she basically has this kind of unrequited crush on Ernest for reasons unknown.
I mean, honestly, I thought, again, they're inconsistent here because when she's first introduced, the first thing she's doing, she's hawking the lottery tickets. We can already kind of see that she's a little money hungry.
Yep.
So at least that reads. It's a little telegraphed.
Yeah.
Overly so, but it at least reads. Compared to a bunch of other things in this film, at least it reads.
Yeah.
But when we're introduced to the idea that Ernest is obviously into her.
Yep.
But during that beat, and I really don't get it, they do a bit where she wipes her hand on her thing, and they do a way over exaggerated sound effect where it's like,
yeah,
and then she wipes it on herself. She's made to kind of look grungy and gross, even though she's very, even in her more nerdy attire, very attractive woman.
Yes.
But they have to make her downplay her because Ernest is attracted to her, because apparently ever since we went straight to DVD, he can't be attracted to attractive women. He has to be attracted to women. And even then they say, oh, she's way out of your league, Ernest. I'm like, what the hell is Ernest's league then?
I mean,
is he supposed to be attracted to snails? Is that what we're saying?
I'm open to that joke if they just want to assume that no, even this dowdy, nerdy lady is that's still out of his league. He needs to still shoot lower. Yeah,
I know, but at a certain point where it's
I mean, to be honest, I did not care for the snotty nose blow thing, because that was weird.
If they just depicted her as kind of cutie nerd.
Yeah.
And don't throw in the fact that, she's also a slob and also a little gross.
Well, also because
she's still not in Ernest's league.
Importantly for me, the slob
that just seems a little mean.
The slob thing is irrelevant to the character; never comes up again. If they
it's that one beat. That one beat.
If they wanted to continue playing her as a slob for the rest of the movie, and that's our introduction to it, that's one thing. But no, it's one weird out of character beat at her introduction, which then never pays off.
Yeah, and it is specifically right before they tell Ernest that she's out of his league.
Yeah.
Pointedly so.
Yeah.
And I'm like, look, I get the fact that we're wanting to depict Ernest as a lower status character.
Mm-hmm.
Fine. But let's stop kicking him in the head for crying out loud. It gets to the point where it gets a little mean that, no, you're good enough for nobody, Ernest. Well, great. Thanks. All people who, kind of see themselves in Ernest, thank you for that.
Yeah. And of course, midway through the film, Mr. Moloch comes to her and corrupts her with the temptation of lottery ticket winnings. So that she will then corrupt Ernest, because then we get back into what Moloch's plot here is. Yeah. Moloch wants to corrupt Ernest to again, corrupt Quincy by proxy.
Right.
And so he corrupts Irma for the purposes of then corrupting Ernest.
Yeah.
So he glams her up, gives her furs and fancy dresses and big hair and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And she then starts swooning all over Ernest. She never goes back to her normal personality for the rest of the movie.
No, she stays. In fact, the way that it was pitched in that one scene right before the glam up, is that she's like, you really have the winning lottery ticket? And he goes, yes. And then the next time we see her, she's glammed up. So I'm like, oh, she won the lottery.
Yeah.
But then the last scene, she's like, you still have that winning lottery ticket? I'm like, you didn't get that already?
Yeah.
Where did we get the big makeover and everything?
He's the devil. He gave her nice stuff and whatnot, I guess. By the way, when the first scene with the two of them, when she loses the lottery, I wrote this down.
Yeah.
She's watching the TV, and the winning lottery numbers are 6, 4, 3, 8, 2, which astounded me because, like, that did someone not want to write like actual lottery numbers and just pick like 5 numbers that are all 8 or below? Like that's.
Yeah.
They're all single-digit numbers. That is a really remarkably weird lottery
number. Yeah. No, it's true.
Yeah, but but no, like her character ultimately feels like it's there to pad out the movie because her being a love interest, it's
very inconsequential until Moloch decides to use her to turn Ernest. Because I wrote down at a point. Because we're seeing montages of where she obviously, this is not an unrequited love.
No,
she obviously is also into Ernest, which made me go, "Oh, this is nice. This is sweet. When are we going to get them together?" Oh, not until she's trying to mess with him.
Yeah.
Well, that sucks.
Yeah, because again, you'd think and again, this is. A lot of this movie is in some ways repeating beats from Ernest Goes to School, where he like basically gets superpowers and becomes conceited, and like the people around him distance themselves.
Right.
But they didn't really play that with the music teacher that much in the last film. No.
I mean, honestly, after he loses his smarts, that their relationship is never played with again.
Well, yeah, but I mean, him being a jerk never really impacts her that much.
No, well, I mean that was one of the issues that we had with that film is that it was inconsistent. People that didn't know him actually liked him more, and the people that already were friends with him thought he was a jerk.
Yeah, so if you would think if you're going to set up her having this kind of somewhat reciprocal crush here, you know, it's established at different times that they kind of like each other.
Yeah, I will say I find it a little frustrating simply because we established that during the time that the films were being distributed by Disney straight up said no. Ernest can't have a love interest. He's smooth down there. Was I believe the quote. So now we're finally giving him a love interest, but both times that he's been given a love interest, they've ended up not actually like showing an interest in Ernest, but ultimately being either bad for him or not actually interested in him.
Well, in this one, she actively betrays him.
Right, right. And so, yeah, in both, it seems like, oh, these two might get together. And in both, I mean, a little less so in Ernest Goes to School, but, he straight up, belittles himself, a student in front of a teacher, and she does nothing.
Yep.
And I'm just like, yeah, I don't like her anymore. Now I don't want her with him.
Yeah.
So, both times we've kind of turned his love interest into a type of villain.
Yeah.
Seemingly. And I'm just like, can we not just, I mean, I don't need Ernest making out or anything, but can we not just have like a pleasant, kind of cutesy relationship for Ernest? Something?
Yeah. Here we explicitly have a scene where she's like, kind of trying to float the idea of going to dinner. He invites her to come to the game. You kind of think this is setting up like they're going to have a date or something in the future. And I think that basically the next time we see her is her being corrupted by Moloch.
Yeah, honestly, the closest that we've gotten to a pleasant relationship is in Ernest Goes to Jail between him and Charlotte. And that's never really like, we talked about it when we talked about that film. There are moments when she seems slightly interested, but then verbally always just says, oh, but we're friends, right, Ernest? Friends. So,
But here you'd think the more natural
Yeah.
plot to take would be, they have some reciprocal interest. They've already discussed going on a date,
yeah.
and that he then becomes a conceited basketball player, and she doesn't like the sight of him, and she pulls away.
Instead, she's the instrument of his destruction, and when
Exactly.
that doesn't work, she still is basically the only consolation prize of Moloch.
And similarly, if you want to play her, and also a valid way to do this, if you want to play her as the corrupting force of him, like a source of temptation for Ernest P. Worrell,
Yeah.
then you probably don't want to set her up as someone who has an interest in him. You would want to make that an unrequited, this is this girl he likes. If only she would like me back.
Yeah,
And
I actually would have
No.
preferred it if we'd not seen any interest in him, and then you could tell that it was Moloch telling her to seduce him rather than, her having an actual interest, and then it.
Oh no,
being
that's
corrupt.
what I'm saying. Is that it would be unrequited on her part, like
Right.
Ernest- someone Ernest likes.
Her flirting with him was all his plan.
Yeah.
Moloch's plan.
Yeah, so I
Not a
think it would work-
genuine attraction. That she
Yeah, I
had.
think it would work better if this is someone who Ernest he knows she's out of her league, but Moloch knows having the woman who's out of his league, who has no interest in him.
Yeah, again, if we could actually say that she's out of his league about a woman who's actually out of his league.
Exactly. You make the character different, obviously. You don't feel there's the same dowdy.
If we'd had kind of a more a less sweet version of like a Charlotte.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So again, just conflicting narrative ideas here that just.
Yeah, and to the point that I'm almost like, are you guys even on Ernest's side here?
Yeah.
It's like, can we not have some happiness for him?
As much as I like Stevie Valence's performance, especially as Irma, I wish we'd had more Irma. And she did fine for what she was asked to do as the glammed up Irma, but I really didn't get much out of that part of it. Like I don't think it accomplished much. Once she made that turn. Also, she goes off with the devil at the end of the movie, which feels like a really dark end for the character.
Yeah, no. I mean, like I said, she is his one consolation prize, because basically he went after two people to get one other person.
Yeah.
And the only one that he ended up actually securing was poor Irma.
Yeah. No, she basically ends up as what is it? Persephone, who's the bride of Hades in old mythology? Persephone, yeah. So she just walks off into the mists or whatever with the devil.
Yeah. No, it's I'm looking back through my notes. Oh, just to go back to the beginning of the film, we get a kind of a setup. It really wasn't necessary, but we get a flashback scene to 1964 of Ernest basically watching a bunch of kids play basketball. And I mean, I get why they do it, because you can dress a kid up like Ernest, but it's hard for anybody else to be Ernest. You're kind of setting them up for a little bit of failure. I mean, honestly, I think if anybody could get away with it, it would be a kid.
Yeah.
But they don't have the kid talk, but they go through basically this thing where he gets the ball and just shoots it, and it ends up causing all of this destruction, basically. First of all, none of the destruction gags were funny. I did not enjoy any of that scene. And the way that they played the kid, partially because he's silent and partially because of the look and the way that it moves, they make Ernest come across as a special needs character.
A little bit, yeah, I suppose you're right.
And I was just like, first of all, that child Ernest was super talkative. and just like, hey guys, let me show you how it's done. I'll get this, let me take the ball from the half court. That that's exactly what he would have been doing.
Yep.
Even if you wanted to have Jim Varney, gauge down his voice and voice the kid for him. Didn't come across as Ernest at all. In fact, made him come across as special needs, which to then be ridiculing that character again feels problematic. So again, that scene wasn't needed at all. There was also the bit where, before we even meet Barry, where he's talking to the clean sweep guys, the other clean sweep guys, and he's like, come on, guys, let me play basketball with you. I love basketball, that kind of thing. One of the reasons that they tell him, I mean, number one, it's that he's white. He's very, But another thing that they tell him is they're like, dude, you're too short. They're all his height.
Yeah.
There might be one of them that's like, I think he's supposed to be like 5'9", 5'10". There might be one of them.
Yeah, it's not like he's
5'11"
service where everyone's 6'5" or something.
No. Every single one of those guys, like one of them might have an inch or two on the others.
Yeah.
Otherwise, they are all the same height. And I was like, I feel like this was written before you cast, and then you did not rewrite it.
Yeah.
No, why keep that in? Throw it out. It doesn't make sense. But yeah. There were just, I feel like we've talked about the plot enough. I mean, was there anything about the plot that you wanted to mention?
No, I don't think so.
Yeah. So I'm just kind of going through my notes now. I will say I did like the fact that Barry and the team, because, basically what happens is they are playing basketball, which probably is the main reason that they are glad that he covered for them, because they're probably not allowed to be playing basketball in the mall.
Yeah.
Even after they finish cleaning.
Yeah.
Huh? Yeah.
I think they more or less say that. Yeah.
Right. So, basically, Ernest gets the ball. I will say the shot, and they needed to do something else, because the shot in which we see Ernest get the basketball, it straight up looks like the guy passes it to him. Instead of, what we've been building here, in that nobody wants Ernest to play basketball because he's not just bad, he's actively bad and destructive at it.
Yeah.
But it straight up looks like the guy passes him the ball, because Ernest is on a ladder, for crying out loud. There's no way to accidentally have passed him the ball.
Yep.
If he was like passing and like tripped or something, I could have gotten it. But it looks like he passes him the ball. He goes, he shoots, and it knocks over an art installation, which doesn't break the art installation, but it does break some lights.
Yes.
And then,
then the sprinklers go off. Yeah.
Right. Which honestly, looking at it, I'm like, comparatively, this doesn't seem that bad. But of course, the owner of the mall, and I will say, I did like the fact that, because again, all of a sudden, Slam Dunk Ernest, we finally have people of color in this film, but they are cleaners.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, this is a little iffy. And then the manager of the mall comes in, and he's also a person of color. I'm like, okay, I like that. Number one, it's not the entire rest of the world besides Ernest is black. But we are populating it in smart places with other people of color.
Yeah.
I will say there was a point another point later on in which the kid was playing basketball, and all the other kids he's playing basketball with are white. And I'm like, really, we couldn't have gotten another black kid or a Latino kid or, somebody. No, they're all, white kids. But
It's Vancouver. It's a short supply. Yes.
apparently, I mean, they found him.
They found him, obviously.
Yeah, and all the kids needed to do was play basketball.
Yep.
But yeah. Anyway, so he does, like I said, he covers for them and basically says it was all his fault.
Yep.
Doesn't mention basketball at all. And so that is why they feel like they owe him. And what he specifically asks for is to be on the team. He doesn't say, he does say, I want to play with you guys. But you can tell it's really all about, he just wants to belong. He wants to feel like part of the group. Again, he is the one white guy who works for this company who's not part of the team. And it's like, that does seem like, that's not fair, guys. Everybody else in the company is part of the team. I get that he can't play, but he can at least, dress out and sit on the bench.
Yep.
And that's basically what they do. They basically, as you said, they think of him as a glorified mascot. But they're straight up with him. They're like, you're not going to play. You're just going to warm the bench. And he's fine with that. I mean, I'm sure in his head, he's thinking that eventually he'll get to play. Obviously, we see that later. But I like the fact that they're upfront with him. At no point are they trying to screw him and, cheat him out of this deal. They are upfront with him about the fact that he's just going to be on the bench, but he can be part of the team. He can have a uniform.
Well,
I mean it does kind of suck that they
play, and then he still seems taken off guard, like, oh no, we're just saving you for like overtime or something like that. Like, clearly,
right, but that's during the game when he is being actively, interfering.
No, I mean,
they're trying to play
the offer. The other guys pull Barry aside, and they're like, we can't let him play. And Barry's like, we're just going to let him be the mascot. But they don't tell Ernest that.
Well, they don't tell him that he's the mascot, but because he's not wearing a mascot outfit. But they do tell him, you're not going to play. You're just going to warm the bench. So I do like that they're at least that upfront. With him. Let's see.
I thought of a couple things. One is that it's, obviously we get magic shoes that at first seem to just make him like fleet-footed, like he can jump really high and run really fast. Later on, somehow the shoes also make him really good at shooting baskets.
Yeah.
The magic is just kind of hazy in that.
Yeah. I will say there is one bit that I actually thought was really funny because it's during the bit, because the whole idea of this it initially just starts off with they're trying to win like the their little like league.
It's just a city league tournament.
Yeah, that's a city league. Thank you. They're trying to win their city league. But then it's eventually mentioned that whoever wins the city league is going to get to play the Charlotte Hornets.
Yes. That was the other thing I was going to bring up, actually. Yes.
Which I'm like, that seems like if I were on the city league, I'd be like, can we just like play a scrimmage?
Yeah.
Let's not play a game with actual fans. Let's just meet the guys and play like a scrimmage.
Yeah, can we just
that seems lopsided.
Have a free throw contest or something?
Yeah.
Anything other.
Let's just hang out with these guys and not like, basically set them up as the Harlem Globetrotters versus the Generals here.
Yes, exactly.
Let's just have a little fun. But yeah, so they're supposed to be able to play the Charlotte Hornets because of Ernest's ability. I mean, honestly, they build up the clean sweep like it is a foregone conclusion even before Ernest gets the magic shoes that they're going to be the ones that win this tournament. Everybody seems to think so. Even commentary, Dr. Love, who again we will get to.
They do have some pretty professional looking jerseys there for their city leagues. Clean.
They do, which is one of the things that I was like, oh, you could have at least given like Ernest a blank jersey. I mean, did you notice that his number was -0? It wasn't even 0.
I didn't notice it was -0. No, I didn't.
Yeah,
that is a solid joke, actually.
Yeah. But so he they do eventually win the finals, and they're playing the Hornets. But Ernest, because basically he's a superhero with these shoes, is destroying the Hornets all by himself, pretty much, to the point where basically the rest of the team can leave the floor. And Ernest is winning the game by himself. But there's a point at which Ernest is like sitting on the sidelines, and I'm like, I don't think that's in the rules. I don't think he can actively be off the court and still an active player, but okay. But he's like sitting on the sidelines, and he's like, tell me when the ball's in the air. And Barry shoots the ball from the 3-point position, and Irma's like, it's in the air, and he's like, good. And he jumps up and grabs the ball that's heading into the hoop and pushes it through. And Barry's like, that was a 3-pointer. You turned it into a 2-pointer. Okay. I was just like, yeah, that's a really good point.
Yeah.
I thought that was a funny joke. Like, you just turned a 3-pointer into a 2-pointer. What are you doing?
Exactly. That was good.
Let's see. I wrote down, the kid steals the shoes that are on display. There's no way those are his size.
His size?
No way.
Yeah.
No way. And we see him wearing them later, and they're obviously his size.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was just like, okay.
Magic shoes.
Yeah. Yeah. There was another bit, and honestly, this is one of the slightly racially themed things that I was like, okay, that's actually a funny bit, because, and you can tell that they are playing off of the scene from Aladdin where they bring him into the city, and it's the Prince Ali bit.
Yep.
Because they bring him into the Hornets game, basically all duded up in like Arabian stuff, and they announce him as like Ernest Ali, blah 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 blah. And one of the guys on the clean sweep goes, when did Ernest become a black Muslim?
Yeah.
And I was like, it's a really good point. It's a really good point. Because one of the big shots against Aladdin was that they were appropriating all of this stuff and from a culture and making it very white. And it was kind of doubling down on that joke. It's like, yeah, this isn't a name we just throw around. These things mean something.
Yeah.
And so I thought that was actually a pretty interesting commentary there. Let's see. I'm going to go back because honestly, one of my favorite bits is in the middle of this. The last note I actually have written down is, we mentioned that Ernest goes off, or not Ernest, Irma goes off with Moloch, and she's like, do you still have that lottery ticket? And there's a line because she goes, are we gonna have lots of money? And he goes, yes, expensive money.
Yes.
And I was like, expensive money? What?
It almost feels like that was a verbal blunder, and they just didn't want to do another take.
No, honestly, I feel like that was a joke.
Yeah.
Either intentionally by him or the writers. I felt like that was like, and I appreciated it. I thought that was funny. Just to kind of, play on how ridiculous this whole bit is. Yes, money, expensive money. But yeah, like I said, I do want to go back to mention a couple of things. This is one thing I forgot. At one point, the clean sweep needs to go to a game in order to stay in the tournament. But of course, the mall doesn't want to let them go because of the last incident. Even though they let them go to a game in between, yeah, whatever. But basically, in order to keep their jobs, they have to make the mall like sparkling. And Ernest has the shoes at this point, and he's like, "I'll do it. I'll take care of it." And he goes, and with the shoes, he's able to make the place dazzling, super clean and everything. But he cleans the entire mall with a mop. He uses no other implements. He uses a mop to wipe the windows, I mean, at one point they do show him using a squeegee, but they also show him rubbing it on windows.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, rubbing that mop on windows. And I'm just like, I don't think that's how you want to do that. But I also want to finally talk about Dr. Love, our commentator during the games. And I actually really enjoyed this character.
Yep.
I would have liked it if we had gotten a little bit more than just her commentary, like maybe if she'd entered the story a little bit. But most of these characters are cardboard cutouts. Yep. So I think the fact that she got as much as she did is saying something. But she adds a great energy. I really enjoyed her commentary of the game and things like that. And I just found her a fun, enjoyable character.
No, one touch I liked with her, because it never paid off in any particular way, it was just a fun background detail, was just her giant assortment of snacks. She also has.
Yeah, I loved that. I'm like, okay, this is because she was played by Lawson Chambers.
Yes.
I honestly believe that was her idea.
Yeah. It very well
just to get, because she's like, well, I got nothing else. Let me give kind of background into this character just by the things I got around. So yeah, you're right. She often had all of these snacks. Now, we never saw her eating any of them, but she always had them.
She just had like multiple bowls of different kinds of chips and dips and all kinds of stuff scattered around her, more than any one person could possibly eat. But it was just a huge, cornucopia, variety of snacks that were there.
Yeah.
Now that I think of it, it reminds me of a play I saw the other week where it had a cab driver who was waiting outside, and every time the cab driver would come back into the room to ask, "Are you coming out to get in the cab?" he had a different snack with him that he was in the middle of eating.
Yeah, that's really funny.
Yeah.
All right. So the last thing that I really want to get into is, did you notice all of the references to other Ernest films in this film?
No.
Seriously? Yeah. Okay. So I know I missed a good bit of them, but number one, pretty much at least all the ones that we heard the names of, the teams that they played were all references to different films.
Oh, okay.
So let's see. Sorry, I'm trying to see if I can get a list of the other references here. But I can tell you, okay, so the first team that they play, that they lost to, was Crater Construction from Camp Ernest Goes to Camp.
Okay, yes.
Yeah. I mean, I believe in that it was specifically Crater Mining Company, but still, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So you've got Crater Construction. I think one of the other teams that they played was, I think it was actually like a Chinese restaurant or something like that, but it was called Kikaki.
Okay, the camp, yeah.
Yeah, Camp Kikaki. And another one was Tulip Brothers from Ernest Scared Stupid. Yeah. We also have Trantor Dairy.
Okay, yeah,
Yeah, that one actually took me a second because I was like, Trantor Dairy? What? It took me a while to realize, oh yeah, Trantor. That was the name of the troll.
and Derry was what defeated Trantor.
Oh, I didn't even think that's actually a really good one. Then.
That's a
Yeah.
good
And there were some others that I did. Oh, one of the sponsors listed around the thing was Mighty Workboy Vacuum.
Okay, yes.
I wait. There's if there isn't, somebody needs to put together a list because I know I missed some. I know I missed some.
Wait, let's see. I've never contributed to IMDb, but let me see if I can find it here. Let's go to this is fascinating audio at the moment, but I'm gonna see if I can find the Slam Dunk Ernest page and see if there's any trivia for Slam Dunk Ernest.
Okay.
This is something that belongs on an IMDb trivia page.
Yeah. I mean, look, I know that these films are lesser known, especially in this era. But
it's covered. It's
okay.
When Ernest and his team are playing against the others, check out the names: Kick a Key Fish.
Okay, Fish. Okay.
Yep. Tulip Brothers Hardware.
Okay.
And Trantor Dairy. So it only lists 3 actually. So
it doesn't list the Crater one that I mentioned.
The Crater one, no, it doesn't.
Okay.
No.
Okay. So nothing new. In fact, we could add to that list.
We could. Yes.
But yeah, honestly, I would be interested to just go through and find all of the I mean, I think it's specifically in the games. Especially in that like montage of them playing all the teams. But yeah, I thought that was fun. A fun little nod to all of the previous films. But yeah, is there anything else about this film that you wanted to talk about?
Not really. Just the very, you mentioned this a second ago, but the very sweaty explanation for why the City League champion was going to end up playing the Charlotte Hornets.
Yeah.
You normally think in a film like this, you would just hand wave it away. It's like it's a charity event or something like that. They're gonna as a fundraiser or something. They're going to do this, but no, it's a legit news announcement that
and it's being treated as like an actual competitive game.
Yes. And
I'm just like that's not fair.
It's not. No. So that was weird.
Yeah.
I'll mention here in passing, and then we can wrap up. It was one little bitty visual gag I liked. I'll say one I didn't like and one I did. Fashion runway bit towards the end of the film. There's this extended fantasy sequence where Ernest is on a fashion runway. Not funny.
Oh yeah, during his like daydream.
Yeah, he's daydreaming about fame and fortune, and and Irma's telling him about like the fancy clothes he's gonna get, and there's he's literally
and honestly, you know what I think actually would have made that joke work?
What
if he was just wearing his normal outfit,
or variations of it? Yes,
yeah, like if it's just but to make him put on like a leather jacket and a studded hat, I'm like, that's not Ernest.
No, I now that you say it, I do love the notion of him just having variations of the vested T-shirt bit, where it's just like tuxedo.
What I would have loved kind of is like kind of a play on the gag from Ernest Goes to Jail, where they show several different looks, but it's all the same.
It's all the same.
And it's like for winter, for spring.
Yes,
There
was that. Also, when we're first introduced to Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, the light comes on him. He's standing sort of in the misty shadows of the locker room, and he's spinning a basketball on his finger. And as he walks away, the basketball continues spinning in the air, and then drops. And like that brief comic bit, I like that.
That's funny.
That was
funny.
Visual gag.
I missed that. That's funny.
That I don't have anything else to say about this movie though. It's it's
a tough one.
I am curious. I not that there's probably any way to answer this question. I'm curious how they settled on the Charlotte Hornets. Were they just the ones that were willing to like appropriate their image for this film?
Yeah, I mean, well, because we've established they were in Vancouver.
Yeah.
Vancouver's team was the Grizzlies.
Yeah.
So, I really don't know why. I mean, I can say I do know Tennessee didn't have a team at that time. I don't
didn't know.
think.
Here's what.
No, because the Grizzlies, I think, eventually went to Memphis.
Okay. I have a bit of wild speculation here, which is probably not true, but just a theory.
Sure.
Which is that back when he was doing commercials, obviously Ernest was covering, and with John Cherry's direction, covering a decent amount of the Southeast, including, as we covered, the Carolinas.
Yeah.
Maybe someone they knew in the course of their commercial work had a connection
to the
with
Hornets.
Charlotte
Yeah,
Hornets,
it's
and
possible.
was able to make an introduction, make that happen.
Yeah. I mean, I will say I still don't understand why they stopped filming their stuff in and around Tennessee. I just assumed that all of their stuff was in and around Tennessee. It wasn't until I started reviewing these films that I started to realize that, oh no, these three were shot in Vancouver. The next two, as you said, were shot in South Africa.
South Africa, yes.
I mean, sure, they must have been getting deals that somehow made it cheaper, but I'm just like, they seem to have all of these connections around that Tennessee area. So I don't know.
Everything I've ever seen says they did it because of like budgetary reasons. Like even South Africa is cheaper than Canada. But like I just have to wonder how much cheaper, considering I would imagine shooting like an independent low budget feature in Tennessee would not be a super expensive endeavor.
Yeah.
But and it's not like these things are filled with extras. The kinds of things like that basketball game is still largely empty a lot of the time.
Yeah.
But maybe the budget was just that tight that they had to do it. So.
Yeah, that's possible. All right, well, why don't we then go ahead and start getting into our segments? So let us start with our ew moment. This, of course, is your favorite or most interesting scene from the film. And I mean, this might be pretty interesting of a pick. So Lauren, what was your moment?
So I was coming into this, honestly, prepared to say the opening montage with young Ernest. Because something about how that was directed, it just felt a little different from that kind of chaos. Like I wanted to see something different than like Power Tools Gone Bad Again type of thing we've seen before. Also, it wasn't sped up, which is something John Cherry did a lot. So, and he does that several times in this film. I don't like that directorial choice. But I said came into this with that being my choice. You made a good case. It's a weak scene.
Not funny,
not great,
and it's unnecessary completely.
I don't mind it. I do like that it sets up that Ernest loves has a passion for basketball, as opposed to just this being something new as an adult.
If they had let young Ernest actually be Ernest,
no, I agree with you.
I would have been fine with it.
That's what made
the depiction. I really don't like that depiction of Ernest.
No, that was what made the biggest difference for me, and why I came around on this. Was you're absolutely right. Young Ernest should have been a motor mouth, an obnoxious little Southern motor mouth kid, and yes, you could absolutely have Jim Varney did voice work. He could easily voice a kid version of himself.
This came out the same year as Toy Story 2, which, did you notice he uses in fact, I'm pretty sure he never had used this line before. He says the line, "Golly Bob Howdy," which is a Slinky Dog line.
Yes. Wait, what was this the same year as 2? No, 2 was 99. 2 was 99.
Yeah, this was 95. So this was the same year as the first one.
The first Toy Story, yeah, right.
But
so instead, I then have to sit back and think like, okay, so if not that, what else did I like in this film? And I did actually write down. I mean, I already mentioned the spinning basketball thing, but that's not big enough. That was just a quick visual gag. There was one joke I did legit laugh at, I think,
Yeah.
which was, and so this will have to be my choice by default.
Yeah.
When Ernest is attempting to call Irma Taradiddle, he pulls out the phone book and starts flipping through to find her phone number back in the days of physical phone books.
Yeah.
And he still keeps going down the list of pages. You don't see it. You just see his fingers like taradiddle, taradiddle, taradiddle. Turns the page, taradiddle, taradiddle.
Yeah, it's like lots of taradiddles, and I'm like, yeah, because that is funny because it's
like,
an
a lot
odd
of
name.
taradiddles. They must have settled the area or something like that. But the fact that there are like 4 pages of taradiddles in this phone book. No, that was a solid joke. That was. I like that. So that is my moment for this film.
All right. Mine is less a scene and
Mine wasn't a
more
scene.
and more just a collection of bits. I'm gonna give it to the references to previous films.
That's a good choice.
I loved the fact that they used references from the previous films to name all of the teams. I thought that was a fun thing, and it also kind of rewards the people who have watched all of the films, to catch the little jokes here and there. But yeah, I thought that was not to say that there aren't other good bits in it, but when I think about what was my favorite scene, nothing really pops into my head, and that's the thing that I'm like, that was fun. So that is my moment. So that then brings us to the Neldy Award. Of course, the Neldy Award is the award given to our favorite, or again, most interesting character in the film. So Lauren, take it away. Who are you going to give your Neldy Award to?
For the first stretch of the film, I thought that Stevie Valance was in the lead for this, because she seemed cute. I liked Irma more or less as a character. I was wondering where she was going as a character. I had hope. By the way, when I looked up Stevie yesterday, she was. You may remember this. Anyone younger than us surely does not. But she was on Zoobilee Zoo back in the day. She was a regular.
Okay, so a podcast that morning show that I used to listen to all the time, got hooked on making Zoobilee Zoo references and would constantly play the theme song, Zoobilee Zoo, Zoobilee Zoo, whatever it is. So I didn't know of it at the time, but I've heard of it because of that.
No, like a bunch of people from Ernest Goes to School, weirdly enough, she has an extensive voice acting record. But she was at Kangaroo or something like that in Zoobilee Zoo.
I will say, while I did like more the Irma stuff, she wasn't bad as the evil Irma. I didn't like that direction for the character.
No, that's what I was gonna say. Is like she wasn't doing bad with what she was given, but I didn't like the character anymore.
Yeah.
So,
I wanted Ernest to actually have a love interest.
Yeah.
They've been faking it. They've been kind of teasing us for several films now, and it seemed like they were going to finally give it to us. And again, we're like loose. They're like Lucy with the football. We're Charlie Brown. We keep going to kick it, and they keep just pulling it away.
Yep. She did a bunch of these old classic cartoons that I'm sure Dino Saucers. She was on Dino Saucers. She did Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventures, the cartoon. She was on Hammerman.
Okay. All right.
She was in the Super Dave cartoon. Like,
oh, geez.
Yeah. Anyhow, so yeah, as much as I didn't like where that character went, my Neldy Award thus is going to be given to Silk Kozar, because
he's solid.
He's solid. He's grounded, and I think it is kind of a difficult thing to just pull off, just sort of a grounded, normal person in an Ernest movie who still feels, doesn't feel like a stick in the mud or whatnot. He's giving a decent performance, and he's doing a good job opposite Jim Varney.
Right.
I don't think the character. There's not like a real solid arc to him at the end of the day. The arc
Not really. I mean, it's more about him just kind of maintaining the idea that hard work is how you achieve.
Yeah.
Even though Ernest is kind of proving otherwise.
Yeah.
And also him kind of trying to teach his son the same thing, but again, they kind of take his son away from him at a certain point.
But no, he gives, like you said, he gives a good, solid performance in this film.
Yeah.
Every time he's on camera, like there's a reason he has worked steadily all these years. He's good. So yeah, Silk Cozart gets Nelly Award.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, good, stable performance. Nothing extraordinary, but a good presence in the film, which honestly is kind of how I would describe what I know of his career.
Yeah.
He's a solid presence, but he's never done anything that makes me go, whoa.
Yeah. He holds your attention, and he can hold your attention and seriously in a way opposite Ernest, because I think it's easy when you're acting opposite a cartoon character to just sort of be a dull dishwater presence on screen. But
right. Well, and like I said, most of the things that I've seen him in, he was in there as the attractive love interest.
Yeah.
And there was a reason for that. Good looking man.
Yeah.
Very good looking man. But yeah, okay. So for my Neldy Award, honestly, the moment this character was introduced, I was like, I think this might be my Neldy Award. And I kept considering other people here and there, but something would happen that I'd be like, no, that doesn't work. No, that doesn't work. And there was, again, a lot of these characters are very flat, very ill-defined. But so you really just had to go with a character that was fun and interesting, and you could see a more interesting world around them, even if it wasn't depicted.
I think I know where you're heading here.
So, ultimately, I had to go with my Neldy Award goes to Dr. Love.
I called it. Very good.
Yeah. I found her, I mean, again, nothing extraordinary, but she was just so fun and pleasant. And I actually if my local team was done commentary by someone like Dr. Love, I would listen just for them.
Yeah.
A likable, enjoyable voice.
Yeah.
And, really kind of, bringing, a diverse flavor into this.
She is a much better live commentator than a city league deserves for these kind of games. Yeah.
Agreed. I did find it odd that I'm like, Dr. Love gets to call the Hornets game. Okay. I'm not complaining. Yeah. I don't think it makes sense, but I'm not complaining. But yeah.
I wish I had known this back in 1995, because my math teacher in high school for class and for math team and whatnot was Dr. Love.
That was just his name?
That was his name. Yeah.
Wow.
Dr. Dwight Love.
Oh, well, there you go. There you go. But yeah, so Lawson Chambers as Dr. Love gets my Neldy Award. All right. So that then brings us down to the question. The question, the most important question, the question so important that Ernest himself never stopped asking. And the question is this: Lauren, when it comes to this film, Slam Dunk Ernest, do you or do you not know what he means, Vern?
To go back the last few episodes here, After Scared Stupid, I thought it was just going to be dire from there on out. Ernest Rides Again made me feel that was probably going to be the case. Ernest Goes to School gave me hope that maybe some of these latter films might be better than my expectations had led me to believe. And Slam Dunk Ernest let me down. Like, yeah. This was rough. This was this was Hey Vern, it's Ernest level rough.
Ooh.
Yeah. Uh, they're just everything from the production values to the actual script to
Yeah.
I part of the reason I did not notice all those team names, I was fairly easily distracted for the latter part of this film. So
Sure.
so yeah, again, as we've discussed, there are elements here we see that could have maybe been spun into a more structurally coherent film for Jim
Sure.
Varney, but the product we got, I did not care for it.
Yeah. I will say I didn't have as bad of a time as you did. I mean, you put this on the same level as, Hey Vern, it's Ernest. That to me is the lowest we have gotten.
Yeah.
I did not think that this was that bad. But this is the most cheap an Ernest film has seemed. And there really was nothing to it. I
Yeah.
mean, you can look at the time on the podcast and know that there was nothing to it because most of these go at least 2 hours. And if we get to 2 hours, it's just because we're filling in time.
Yeah.
There just wasn't, I mean, there were, I will say there was enough pleasant that I wouldn't, like I said, I wouldn't put it at the lowest of the low.
Yeah.
But, like I said, the first half of this film, I was like, this is so straightforward that there's nothing really extra. I need a little bit more to this.
Yeah.
And the more that they added actually made it worse rather than better. So yeah, I think ultimately I also have to say I do not know what he means. I was trying to see if maybe I could be mixed here, but I think ultimately I just got to say it's just not quite there for me.
Yep.
So, some of the other things that we've had problems with, I could look at and be like, if they just changed this, or if they, even with, I know that you were not the biggest fan of Ernest Rides Again, but even there, we were like, if they just did this, this would work. I honestly don't know what you do to this. I mean, aside from, some of the things that we threw out, I think would have made it more interesting or would have made it not as weird.
Yeah.
Like needlessly weird. I have no problem with weird. What I have a problem with is weird that has no point, that has no meaning, that
I think with enough
doesn't
changes,
accomplish anything.
I think with enough changes, you could get this up to fine. Like it's where it's just like, yeah, put your kids in front of it. It's
yeah. Whereas I genuinely think that if you gave the last two scripts another pass,
yeah,
they could be good Ernest movies.
Yeah.
Whereas this one, I don't see this being anything better than TV special level.
Yeah. No, again, like I said,
which is really kind of what it reads like.
It's too much of a mess. There are too many conflicting elements. You have the basketball, you have the true life after school lesson thing with Quincy. You have the literally biblical magical characters running around who are giving away magical items. And I want to be clear, like the biblical and the magical things don't even match up themselves.
No,
don't talk. So like that is a much more of just like a supernatural element. You could You could have solved some of that by having, Ernest have somehow come into possession of like experimental, science, super scientific shoes. It doesn't
Sure.
matter if it makes any sense. It matters in the context of the movie. They're super basketball shoes designed to make you play good basketball. But obviously, then you don't have like Moloch and the Archangel as characters, which is
I mean, honestly, because I will say, a part of me almost considered giving my Neldy to Kareem Abdul-Jabbar.
Yep.
Just because he's not a bad presence in the film. And I honestly would have been fine if it had just been. I didn't need the Moloch character. I would have been fine if it had just been like a divine thing, and then we're teaching Ernest a lesson about, because let's be honest here. As good-hearted as Ernest is, he can sometimes, when he does actually succeed, get a little full of himself.
Yeah.
So it would have been kind of a good lesson for him.
Yeah.
To kind of go through that. Maybe the lesson then is, Ernest, you got exactly what you wanted. You wanted to be good at basketball.
Yeah.
But you lost your team.
Yeah.
You lost your friends. Is that really what you wanted?
The monkey's paw of it all.
Yeah. Something like I would have been fine with that.
Yeah.
I mean, would it have been really slight? Yeah. But then we wouldn't have had the weird, Moloch and Irma and
also at the same time, like I think I hinted at earlier, I would not super mind like a movie where it just like a literal angel and devil are fighting over the soul of Ernest P. Worrell. If it was just like, or the Bible according to Ernest P. Worrell.
But done better than this.
But again, not mashed up with basketball and after school special. Like
sure.
This is all like oil and water stuff that is just not mixing very well together.
Honestly, what I almost would have preferred if they wanted to do the devil character.
Yeah.
We don't need Moloch. We already have an evil being introduced into this universe. Dr. Otto.
Oh, Dr. Otto, yes.
Dr. Otto as the evil, force trying to manipulate Ernest's life, and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar gets involved to help him out.
If only Jim Varney had lived longer into the age of cinematic universes, we could have merged the Dr. Otto and the Ernest universes a little more thoroughly. Yes.
Yeah. I mean, this would have been the first multiverse crossing film.
For the Ernest,
he crosses from his universe into the Slam Dunk Ernest universe, and I would have been fine with that.
Yeah.
But as it is.
Yeah, not enough Dr. Otto in these last.
And then Ernest's love interest could have been Rhonda from with the HVAC tube on her chest.
Why does Ernest never have a robot love interest?
Right?
These last few episodes.
I mean, we've seen that he's mechanically inclined. It wouldn't be a stretch. Let's just be honest.
Crud. There's probably a mashup trailer you can make with Ernest P. Worrell and her. Where he...
All right. Well, now I think it is time to go ahead and let people know how they can get into contact with us. So you, of course, can contact me at The Flying Cow Pod on Twitter and Instagram. You can also email me at theflyingcowpod on gmail.com. You can also... don't forget to check out all of the other podcasts. You are a patron if you're hearing this, so you know all about them, but make sure to check them out on the podcast, YouTube, everything like that. We're here. Make sure to check out the other tiers, so that you can find the video version of this podcast. And hope to see you there. But Lauren, want to go ahead and give you the opportunity. Anything you want the people out there to know?
All right. You can find me on Twitter at Lauren Collins. On the other apps as well, just don't post as often. Search my name, Lauren Collins. If you need an attorney here in the state of Georgia, feel free to reach out. It's when I'm not here recording podcasts with Clay, that's the day job. So
All right, all right. But yes, so like I said, thank you to everyone for listening. Hope you guys have been enjoying this trip so far. We are getting very close to the end here. And we will be back next time. We're already here, folks. Next time we will be reviewing Ernest Goes to Africa. I am already cringing. Already. I'm not hopeful for this one at all. Yeah, we've already seen where some of this can go. Yeah, and it's not pleasant. Join us for that cringe fest. But until that time, move. Know what I mean?
Mm.